I'm Samantha Whitcraft. I'm with Oceanic Defense.
And I'm Deb Castellana with Mission Blue.
I'm here for two reasons. Under my scientist hat with the University of Miami, I was out on a research cruise looking at plankton and effects of toxicology on the plankton in the pelagic system.
To do with the oil spill?
Yeah. And then I've been on land for, 3 days now? Mm-hmm. Seems longer than that.
Well, you've been in the air for 3 days.
Yeah.
You haven't really been on land.
And as soon as I met up with Deb, she had arranged a meetup with a woman named Bonnie Shoemaker, who's with On Wings of Care. And she's been flying over the Gulf
ever since this happened.
Yeah. So
every day,
she knows everything that's going on, from what's going on with the animals to the oil to at least from looking at it from the sky, which is, we're both learning, an incredible perspective. And so we've been in the air together for 3 days now, looking at specifically helping Dr. Eric Hoffmeyer from Gulf Coast Research Lab, GCRL, look for whale sharks. But while we were out there, we saw orcas, pilot whales, a hammerhead today, a leatherback. What else did we see?
Big pods of dolphins.
Yeah, huge pods.
Very
of dolphins.
hopeful to see
40 to 50 dolphins. It was interesting because we were the first part of our trip. We were in separate places. She was on land and I was out on the water, and I came back full of hope. And she had had a much different experience here on land. And I thought that was really poignant, because what's really going on here is there's actually two spills, if you think about it. There's what's going on in the pelagic, which is one kind of spill that we've actually never, as a nation, had to deal with before. And then there's the coastal impacts, which is what Deb was experiencing. So in the pelagic,
Pelagic meaning deep water?
Open ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, deep, open, blue.
Not everybody will know.
Right, yeah. Sorry, yeah, pelagic, open ocean. And when I came here with really mixed emotions, because I didn't know what I was going to see, and I was concerned and worried, and I'm still concerned and worried. But what I saw out there was nowhere near the apocalyptic doom and gloom that I had come to expect. Where there was oil, it was what I would call a dense sheen. It seemed to aggregate around the sargassum, which is the floating algae that's out there. And the good news for me as a person and as a conservation biologist was that we were escorted as we were leaving Mississippi Sound by 200 laughing gulls flying right beside the boat as we were leaving at night, and I meticulously checked every single one. There wasn't oil on any of them, which is not what I expected. And then when we got out there, we immediately were starting to see dolphins. We were seeing huge schools of yellowfin tuna. We were seeing pilot whales. So what I thought was going to be, and other scientists have said to me too, based on other oil spills in the past, like the one in San Francisco, we thought it would be a dead zone. And there's still a lot to be concerned about, and we have no idea what the results are going to be from the samples that we've taken and looking at whether or not the hydrocarbons show up in the RNA. But, for me personally, not as a scientist, but for me personally, I was more hopeful than I thought I would be. Much of the food chain in the open ocean, or the pelagic region, is actually in the mesophotic zone and in the top zone. That's where the fish spawn, and that's where most of the concentration of plankton is. And plankton is the base of the food chain in the open ocean. So if the oil, the broken down oil or the dispersed oil or the heavy parts of the oil do sink, there could potentially be severe impacts to the benthos, to the deep ocean, and then we don't know what happens after that. That's a total unknown. But in terms of where the food chain starts in the open ocean, it actually starts in the upper part of the ocean.
Like, is that the middle water type?
Well, the plankton zone actually moves from day to night. So at night, the truly productive part of the plankton is down deeper, and during the day it comes up.
Rises with the sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a nocturnal migration of a lot of the plankton. So when we talk about the base of the food chain and what the impacts of residual oil or oil components might be, there's a difference between when we talk, and this is what I was talking about, the difference between a pelagic spill or an open ocean spill and a coastal spill. Those two ecosystems function terrestrial and marine, very, very differently. So they're both of concern, and we need to look at them both and understand them both. We need to understand that they're different. There's also different components to the response, right? There's dealing with oiled and distressed wildlife, and that's about rescue and rehab. But when you're looking at how the whole ecosystem functions from a food chain point of view, that's not kind of an individual animal rescue and rehab kind of response. That's more of a baseline science, monitoring, taking samples, analyzing those samples. Not even species, it's more ecosystem function. In other words, how are fish eggs and or larvae or plankton going to respond at a lethal or sublethal level to the presence of oil or hydrocarbons? So I think the reason some of that isn't being talked about in the general public yet is because that's the scientific process. I mean, you have to collect the information first, then it has to be analyzed, evaluated, and then once you have the information, then you respond to the information and apply it. So the looking scientifically at what's going on with the plankton and the base of the food chain in the open ocean is only just starting. And again, it's new to us in the United States. We've never had a subsurface open ocean oil spill, so there's a lot of questions to be asked. The coastal thing, now that's someplace where we do have some understanding from past oil spills what those impacts might be. So when knowledgeable people who deal with ecosystem restoration in marshes and oil spill impacts have something intelligent, knowledgeable to say, that's based on, we've been down this road before. The open ocean question, I think, is one that needs to be investigated. One of the really great analogies I've heard from colleagues that I work with is that when you have an oil spill like this, it's there's a bathtub ring effect, and that's what the coast is experiencing, and it's going to continue to experience that. But again, in separating the kind of the feeling of what's going on and what might actually be going on. For instance, there's been a lot of talk about a massive death zone and fish kills along the coast. Those are happening, and there's reason to be concerned, and there's reason to take samples and try and figure out what's going on. But if you look at the low oxygen zones that have been along that coast. Existing dead zones, or dead. They happen seasonally. They happen in the summer when the temperature goes up in the shallower waters. Those have happened along the coast of the Gulf year in and year out. And what's happening this year is that ones that have always been there are connecting, right? So you're getting this one continuous zone instead of patches of zones. So it's not that it's necessary. There is more impact than there has been in the past, but it's not that the spill caused suddenly the whole zone to go, the whole coastal zone to go. So I'm not downplaying what's happening, because what's happening needs to be evaluated. People need to be aware. We need to hold BP accountable. I think everybody agrees with that. But there's a lot of really important, interesting science about what's going on that also I think the public needs to understand, or it would be great if they understood and appreciated, and that was being included. And I think one of the reasons it's not is because that kind of science isn't sexy and it's not getting the press coverage.
It's not dramatic.